Hello, everyone. This is Chase Pounds. I forgot a couple things to mention regarding the film Atlantic, and I guess that's what I get for not writing my details down. But one thing I meant to mention earlier was that about the true shipwreck, the sinking of the Atlantic in the 1870s. That happened in Nova Scotia, Canada, off the coast of Nova Scotia, Canada. It ran into some rocks, and people got killed even as they had lifeboats. They were being launched, and a lot of the lifeboats, due to the current, were swept to the sea or would hit the rocks, killing more of the passengers. Nova Scotia happens to also be the spot where, in Halifax, they buried many of the Titanic victims later in 1912. So you see, with this shipwreck, there's a lot of connections with the actual Titanic. It was built by the same company that built the Titanic, and ended up sinking the area where they buried many of the victims. And like I said, and it said this came overshadowed by the story of the Atlantic was overshadowed when the movie came out due to the notoriety of the similarities to the Titanic. And the movie as well, typically there's been theories about the passengers, about the basis of the passengers. Even though these are fictitious passengers, there are many similarities to actual Titanic passengers, such as the elderly couple which decided to stay on board the ship despite having a chance to make it themselves. It's maybe loosely based off the story of the Strauss family, that Strauss family, the Strauss couple, which they were the ones who started Macy's department store in New York. They are of Jewish descent, and they also been portrayed in other Titanic movies. And some people speculate that these could have been like a Mr. Strauss character, but altered or changed. Even the crew member, Lanchester, I mentioned right here. Some say he's kind of loosely based off the story of Lightoller, who was one of the few officers to survive by clinging to one of the upturned collapsible boats. Though he doesn't do that in this movie, but some people point out similarities of his heroism. And the movie Atlantic has often been used and recycled. Many of the stock footage have been reused for many of the many Titanic documentaries, particularly the movie Secrets of the Titanic, the great National Geographic documentary, Secrets of the Titanic, which is about Robert Ballard's team, exploring the wreck in the early 80s. In the 80s, and it featured, when we talk about the what happened to, featuring at the beginning, when we talk about the story of the Titanic, they referenced this film. They didn't mention the name. There was Atlantic, but they mentioned it was one of the first made Titanic movies. And it was just how I was first aware that there was a movie of this movie, was from this documentary. And I noticed that really I had seen the pictures of it in this book right here, book that I got from my uncle. That's kind of one of the things how I got interested in the Titanic, from this book and from watching the 1997 movie.
Rain make it, rain girl make
it, 1997 James Cameron movie with Leonardo DiCaprio. And I noticed the scenes, particularly of the promenade deck, that they show looked familiar from this scene right here. And they also featured the deleted scene of the ship sinking, which I never saw when watching the movie. I remember trying to search for this movie on the internet when we used to have Blockbuster's Netflix. It was kind of hard to find it because it was a very old and obscure movie. But I was able to find it on Amazon, and this is how I got the tape. I got it when I was 10 years old in the 4th grade, and I remember the first time watching it. My grandma was babysitting me, and she wanted to know what I was watching. I was watching this movie called Titanic, the Atlantic disaster, and both of us ended up watching it for the first time. And my grandmother, not being a very not very that in well, I should say, kind of surprised me, because my grandmother's not that into watching like movies. Of course, she grew up in an era where she didn't have access to a lot of TV and film, so it was kind of rare to see her watching a full movie. Though she didn't stay to watch the whole thing, because she felt uncomfortable when you got to the scene where the ship turns over, and she got up and left. Interestingly, and that was my memory for the first time watching this movie. It was changed to give the Titanic Association. This film was changed from Atlantic to being called Titanic, the Atlantic disaster. And it was the commentary was added featuring David McCown, who was nobly who played the Marconi operator in the other later British Titanic film, A Night to Remember. And he also narrated the great A&E documentary Titanic, the 2-part Titanic documentary series. And he was and another favorite of mine, beyond Titanic, he was featured in an interview segment when discussing the making of A Night to Remember. So it was this that gave the more Titanic association, even though again it's not truly the Titanic in this movie, the Atlantic. And in this tape, it also came with hearings and testimonies of all the different passengers and crew that testified during the hearings. And the thing about and the thing about Dandy, as I mentioned before, he was a jokester, a hipster in the movie. A jokester in the film, and gave it kind of comedic relief. There's this one scene that I thought was funny. Pull it up real quickly.
Please don't let this get about, sir. I have to tell you. What is the exact position? They should be here early in the morning. They will pick up all in the boats. And the others? No. They are
This is it right here when he's
to be lost. No!
No, it's serious, but just the way his eyes wide up, bucking up like that, just kind of always stood out. And this was inaccurate too. They didn't have sirens, but this scene where his eyes are wide like that, but he's in shock. But shock. But as I said before, also I forgot to mention that even before East Side and West Side, going back to 1913, the year after the Titanic sank, there was a movie called Atlantis, a similar sounding title. Used I think of the Lost Civilization, where they hear the word Atlantis, the city that's supposedly sank on the sea due to an active volcanic eruption and tsunami. And it had featured it was a Denmark film, and it featured a scene as well of a Titanic shipwreck, where the ship during the daytime hits an unknown object. It doesn't. I think it runs aground, and and it starts to rapidly sink. And supposedly, when they made the film, they used an actual ship where most movies at the time typically used models. I'm pretty sure for this film, Atlantic did the same. And also, same year as 1933, you had a movie called Jungle Bride, also featured a shipwreck in that. It was kind of similar to Titanic, where the ship also hits the rocks and blows up and breaks apart. And few refugees remaining survivors take refuge on the island. And you had a Spencer Tracy movie about a ship that catches on fire. Also, it's not Titanic, but it has like a shipwreck thing. That was, again, the trend in those days. Is the 30s, there was movies that always featured disasters. There was kind of a precursor of what you would see later in the 50s and 70s when films started to have like a disaster, spectacle, or calamity featured in as it became I should say the aspect of the film, the trends with disasters. And that's all I got to say. Again, this is another video by Chase Pounds. Stay tuned for my next videos.